I'm really excited about our next panel. We're really carrying on some of the themes that we heard from Gerardo in his session and panel about that multi-tier visibility. And we just heard from Steve there. Thank you for your presentation, Steve, around some of the IT architecture and infrastructure to really support that. So in our next session, we're really looking at that, mapping supply chains from improved visibility, compliance, and transparency, and we're going to get across industry perspective of from an OEM, a supplier, and a provider. And to help us do that, I'll invite our panelists up on stage. So please welcome Mukesh Sharma, Vice President of Global Supply Chain at Exos Trucks. Thanks so much, Mukesh.
Thank you.
And for that provider perspective, we have Thomas Ducker, the Director of Account Operations and Excellence at Infineon Technologies. Thanks, Thomas. And staying in the Nissan family, we have Adam Shoemake, the Senior Manager for Supply Chain Management Compliance at Nissan Americas. Thanks, Adam. And lastly, the provider perspective, Emmanuel Fabian-Kleber, the Supply Chain Expert and Manager of the Applied Value Engineering Team at Celonis. Thanks, Emmanuel. It is a bit of a distance to walk, but if you all want to settle in, we're going to be up here for a while to cozy up. I want to start a little bit more broadly. Visibility kind of has become a broad level capability, and it's delivering value in very different ways depending on where you sit in the supply chain. So I'd love to start with a concrete example from each of you of where is that greater visibility helping you to make better decisions and strengthen your resilience in your operations. Mukesh, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. So at Exos, I would say the biggest impact that we have seen in terms of providing the visibility to supply chain is the ERP and the MES system, right? That actually affords us the ability, a production traceability, right? Means the quality events that used to take several weeks, right, to trace. Now it's a matter of hours. We can actually get to the root cause and also, right, affecting. We can also try to segregate those affected lots, the vehicles, the customers, and that has actually helped us contain the overall impact of such kind of warranty or the quality events. The second most important thing here is the resilient grid model, right? Means trade policy, as we know, right, means right now it has become a very integrated part of supply chain strategies. So the resilient grid model that we actually use, it provides us visibility into the future, right? Means we try to predict the potential risks that might going to come up, and based on that we create some alternate supply paths, and once there is any such trade policy measures that come in, so we activate our alternate supply paths and all. So these are some of the key things that we have in terms of providing the visibility to the organization about our current and the potential challenges and maybe areas of improvement. So so this is where we actually use that.
Thank you. Thomas, where are you seeing that?
So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the manufacturing or the supply chain of semiconductors. It's rather complex. When I started at Infineon 8 years ago, I had to learn as well. So when I start a product today, anything in between 4 to 9 months is the production cycle time. Multiple hundreds of steps throughout different facilities. So we are operating in a global manufacturing network. So being in automotive, so of course we have single device traceability. We need to know where our parts come from, which exact step they have seen in the production. Everything is mapped. So as Infineon, we have that transparency. And speaking of two concrete examples, how we use it, the first one, I think we have all engaged in a lot of discussions about, you call it trade compliance, so tariffs, potential tariffs, in order to define a strategy to optimize tariffs, not only for ourselves, but also for our customers. Of course, we need that transparency, where our parts come from, what are the countries of origin, and also what content is in that parts. And as a second example, basically being a supply chain, day-to-day business, reacting to disruptions. So there may be strikes, there may be an earthquake, there may be floods in Malaysia. With that transparency, we can react to that.
Perfect, thank you. We'll get into some of the semiconductor stuff a bit more later in the panel, but Adam, you are probably no stranger to that at Nissan as well, so.
Yes, and as I thought about this question, I thought about the fact that many times in a day-to-day basis, you're having common conversations, things that come up frequently, but from time to time, you have some of those really crucial conversations where opinions are definitely going to vary and the stakes are very high, and the level of disruption, just because I'm having that conversation frequently with tier one suppliers, doesn't mean the person on the other side of that call is as prepared or as balanced. And so when we're able to introduce a topic and really reaffirm, as Steve emphasized, the partnership perspective is not just peer-to-peer inside of Nissan, but with our tier one suppliers, that this is not us against you or you against us, this is us against a problem. And here's all the data that we have, and this is the way that we see the challenge, and we hope that you can see it this way too, and let's work on this problem together proactively. And so having that grounded source of truth to really have those crucial conversations has been really impactful.
Yeah, thank you. Emmanuel, what's your thought process?
Yeah, for us, so we work with almost all OEMs, and what we see a lot is more and more of the companies being able to understand and visualize and have dashboards in place to understand the supply chain, understands how parts flow, and explain historic events. Where we see then, where we come in and put concrete use cases on top is, for example, when you operate your spare parts environment and your assembly part environment in two completely different silos, right? And then you have shortages of a part in the production line, but your warehouses for spare parts are completely filled. So bringing two worlds together of data silos and helping companies to operate better is, I think, where we see a lot of benefit of the visibility. And what I hear a lot is, we want to be more proactive, we want to use, so all the work that you've done in putting in the visibility and connecting the data, I think now it's time to capitalize on it and come up with the so what. Now we see and we can explain, how can we prevent? So these are a lot of the questions that we're getting asked and where I think we can add a lot of benefit and value.
Yeah, thank you. Adam, you were talking about that balance across suppliers and across the network. I mean, you've managed to choose to manage your supplier engagement more directly. What value has that kind of brought you in how you've kind of owning those supplier relationships yourself?
That's a great question. I mean, part of the problem is that, you know, they asked a recovering engineer to design the system. So if it's going to be more complicated than it needs to be, you ask an engineer to get involved. And we thought about it significantly that when you're soliciting information, whether it's details from a supplier's quotation, whether it's just confirming the right exact street address for a pickup, involving an additional party often just creates a game of telephone. And if the answer is important, why is the supplier not hearing from the OEM? Why is the supplier not hearing from the person that they have the strongest direct commercial relationship with? And so we really felt like, as we thought about what were going to be our technology solutions, our people solutions, our processes, and our governance, that the people deserved an actual outreach from the customer. That if this was important, if this was needed to be known, if it was going to be handled with due care and sensitivity, that they would better respond through contractual obligations that were affirmed and clear, and then actually hearing from the purchaser themselves.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to Emmanuel's point on those data silos, I mean, there's also a growing pressure to reduce duplication, create more consistent approaches. We've kind of heard it across the last 2 days when it comes to collecting more data and sourcing data. As someone closely involved in those kind of standardization efforts at Nissan, but I know Nissan is also part of AIG, where do you see those kind of best opportunities to harmonize requirements?
I think that's a great question, and I think it reflects that we're all at different points on this journey. And I think that when we start with some humility, that others know something too, and that maybe our way isn't the only way or the very best way, that we can each learn. I mean, I didn't know there were hundreds of steps in a semiconductor. You had to have pure sand and all this other stuff. But I mean, Nissan really looks out like, hey, can we take the traceability definitions from the apparel industry? If there's an entire glossary and there's an entire understanding, let's use common terms. Let's have common ways. It's actually, and tier 1 suppliers, please forgive me for this comment, it's actually great that you're complaining that all the OEMs are asking you the same question in a different way, because it means we're all engaged. It means we all see the value. It means that we see that it all needs to get done. So yeah, we've probably all, due to sensitivity, approached it our own ways, but there's a strong desire from AIAG. From those of you that don't know, that's an automotive industry action group. That's General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis working with Toyota, Honda, and Nissan in domains that are not in violation of anti-competitiveness, to have the best quality and safety for the consumers of the United States, to have the best delivery, to have the best supply chain reliability. So yeah, there's a board level interest in continuing to standardize, continuing to create simplicity, and to continue to remove those friction points as we're on this traceability journey. Because it's expected by governments around the world. We've seen the executive order in the last 2 weeks where CBP has been authorized to request and develop more requirements on importer of record requirements. This is the direction of travel. These challenges aren't going away, and the more that we can standardize that, the better our industry will operate.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, we have Kevin here somewhere in the audience, I think. Oh, there he is, from AIAG, and I know he's going to be talking on a panel later. Emmanuel, when it comes to like that data silos or harmonizing those requirements, kind of where are you seeing the biggest opportunities from the provider side and for supporting that?
Yeah, I think a lot of you invested tons of money in data infrastructure, right, in putting data into data warehouses, in the approach of claiming back the data that is yours, right? You outsource logistics, you request NTM mapping now from suppliers, so you pull it all together. And the next step is, I think we've heard this multiple times, is contextualizing the data and making it ready to use for the consumer, to put a predictive component around it, make it ready for AI, and to really, really drive tangible return on investment across all of this infrastructure. And this is, I think, where I see the most return on investment is you almost have too much data, right? So you have too many dashboards that are probably not used when no one looks at they were built at some point in time. So deciding really what outcome you want to drive. Is it I want to reduce my excess freight, right? What do I need to do upstream? How do I need to connect the data points and build, I think we have heard it from Ford, an ontology or however you want to name it, that can answer questions that is related to your business. So when you think about why does AI so good work for consumers, because it points to Wikipedia, it points to Reddit, and Paris is Paris for everyone, right? If I go on a vacation, but your supply chain team A might see things different than your team B, than your team C, and you want them all to get the same context. So that's where I think a lot of the next investment is going to go, to recommend to your people what steps do I need to take in that complex world to drive tangible return on my actions.
Yeah, thank you. Mukesh, from the trucking side, or even for a fast-growing manufacturer, I mean, building that visibility is probably as much about as smart prioritization as it is scale. So how are you deciding where to direct that effort within your organization, and how is kind of that risk-based approach to kind of helping you?
Absolutely. So it's actually a great question, but not very hard to answer. So at Exhaust, like we actually like prioritize based on consequences, right? So, and outcome actually matters. So we care about like any event or any issue or any supply node that in the event of like failure, any compliance gap, any quality escapes, which results in like the biggest impact, right? The biggest business impact. So that actually gets the visibility investment first. So that's for sure. That actually like also in case of like the electric vehicles, the energy storage solutions. So for us, like we primarily focus on like the critical components, like the high voltage batteries, the power electronics, and such. But at the same time, when we get into like the energy storage, that visibility requirement that actually like becomes more pronounced. So now we just not just like have to like focus on any quality events or such, but at the same time we also have to like focus on the UL compliances, right? Means on the energy storage side, the warranty obligation, right? So compared to like the normal automotives, right? Means the ESS systems, like the warranty obligation actually runs into like decades, right? 15, 20 years kind of thing. So you have to have like such kind of like systems that are able to like maintain those traceability data for such a long period.
Yeah, and then actually looking at that kind of compliance side and using those requirements or turning those requirements as something that can strengthen. How is that actually strengthening your resilience, having that visibility when it comes to the compliance side? Yeah,
so I would say like the compliance and the operational resilience, I'll call, they actually like require the same underlying data. So for instance, right, means the UL compliance, for instance, right, means just an example like UL 9540 for the energy storage solutions. It requires us to like document the cell chemistry, the pack architecture, the component sourcing information, right, means for instance. But at the same time, right, means we have like all these compliance, it actually helps us like in the quality traceability as well, right? Means all this data that you're using for for compliance sake, it can also like be used for the quality traceability. And similarly, like there are like certain regulations that have come in, right? They are going to be in operation. Battery transport is one of them, right? Means battery passport, sorry. And in the European Union, right? So that also is going to be like asking for like all these compliance data, but end of the day, like all this data can actually be used in improving like your operations. And in fact, like when you talk about like the sub-tier visibility, right? Means for any of these compliance, right? Means domestic content or whatever, if we are able to like build that capability into the system, right, means we can actually like use that to avoid any future supply disruptions, right? So I know like eventually like who my tier 2, tier 3 is like for the battery chemistry, like for all the anodes, the cathodes and all. And in the event like we have like any such some issues, right, means I can actually like pull the plug and like whatever the actions I have already like planned for. So just go ahead and activate those options. So I think, yeah, so operation resilience and the compliance, in a way, this is how like we actually like try to integrate these two into like our supplier maps and work with them together.
Perfect, thank you. Thomas, I want to come back to the semiconductor side of things. I mean, it really does sit at the heart of that modern vehicle supply chain. I mean, the chip shortage definitely made it clear that a single missing component can stop the vehicle leaving the factory. So what does that strong upstream visibility look like in the electronic side, and how is that kind of driving greater control or reshaping the way you work with the industry?
So, I mean, everybody has made the painful experience that a single missing chip can prevent a car from leaving the factory. So, having said that, I think I have to look at that from two different perspectives. Just believe me when I say it's in Infineon's own interest to be capable of delivering parts. So we, of course, have a very sophisticated, holistic approach to resilience, including different aspects, not only mapping of our global production network, sophisticated supplier management system, evaluation measures to be multi-sourced for critical raw materials, having buffer stocks in place, and so on. So this is all what we drive. What I see in the past years that more and more customers getting engaged in these discussions as well, trying to build that understanding, how do semiconductors work in the supply chain, what are the critical raw materials, we want the transparency, we want the data, we want to map it ourselves as well. Having said that, Emmanuel, I think you called it like, what's the return on investment? What do you want to get out of it? I see a lot of initiatives gathering data, asking questions, mapping or having files with mapping raw materials, and then this is a list of 36 critical raw materials used for semiconductor manufacturing. Please tell me your sources. Partially, I have never heard the names of those materials before. So starting with the goal, what does resilience mean for me? Do I want to avoid certain suppliers from certain regions? Do I want to minimize potential tariffs? Do I want to be prepared for reoccurring natural disruptions? So with the clear goal in mind, then I think you can have Adam, you called it partnership approach. I often see requests flying towards us, revealing data, but I often say, let's do it in a partnership approach, defining what means resilience for you. Then let's look at what data is needed, map it out, and then in the end coming to an emergency plan. For us as a supplier, sometimes it's difficult because over different geographical regions, the requests are different as well, partially contradicting for the same device. So whereas one part of the world is now asking to avoid sources or manufacturing footprint in China or Taiwan, China is going into a localization approach, asking for local material and supply. We call that China for China. So yeah, for us, I think it's a stretch, and we have to find the balance as a supplier in meeting those partially contradicting different customer requirements around the globe and still be able to build and maintain a cost-efficient and lean supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a conversation I was having last night on some of the speaker dinners, like to have that data visibility or to understand how to use the data for visibility is to understand the business case in the first instance to be able to do that. But Adam, I want to get your perspective on the compliance side a little bit. You know, for an OEM importing across several gateways, you know, much of the value shows up in some of the smoother customs clearance and reliable delivery. So how is better data visibility or the data helping you to anticipate those changes?
Well, I mean, let's start at your rule number one of automotive supply chain. Don't shut the plant down, don't shut the plant down, don't shut the plant down, right? So your worst case scenario is getting that phone call, typically 5 to 6 o'clock Central Time, that you're gonna go down the next day. That's always your worst case scenario, right? And so Why is that your worst case scenario? Well, it's just so massively disruptive. You can't change anything about the next 1,400 trucks that are already going to show up, that was expecting empty space in the warehouse, and much less the impact on the people, the pay, the ramifications, the Saturday scheduling, all of those shock waves and repercussions. So you want to get in front of that as much as you can. So anytime you have that visibility, even if you're gaining a horizon of 24 hours, 48 hours. Can you change any of your production control? Is it only going to impact sunroof vehicles? Is it only going to impact platinum grade vehicles? Is it only going to impact this? Is it only going to impact that? Anything that you can do to modulate and mitigate those repercussions, that time is exceptionally valuable. And so I think having that upstream view and having a better understanding has been countless. When we think back very cautiously to the painful era of COVID, and where we would have a 6-week rolling average of the standard deviation of every port for which our sea containers was coming in. And so it's okay, well, what's your safety stock gonna be this week? What's your average time gonna be this? How many expedited trailers are you gonna ship on that? So it affects your costs, it affects your operational robustness, it affects your reliability, and it just affects your ability to really deliver the business plan. So all of those elements are really, really enriched. And I'd like to go just even deeper on the concept of the traceability, because there's lots of degrees of traceability. Do I just want to know where it was from a time event horizon? You know, what was made in June of 2025? Can I find that out today? Do I just want to know what was a certain batch number? Do I need to know the, left-hand rear door side curtain airbag inflator accelerometer date because it's involved in an active litigation case? I mean, so your degrees of traceability need to be pragmatic and practical for a designed outcome. It's great to have a standard basis of level of information, but not everything is going to need everything. And so my question to Roy earlier about that dependency and looking at certain elements, some things are just gonna have to continue to be risk-based, and maybe, some event horizon from now, the AI will know everything and we'll just ask natural language questions. Great. Until then, let's take a risk-based approach and let's have a reason for asking the questions we are and make sure that we're moving the business forward.
Yeah, thank you. Emmanuel, everything kind of what we're discussing here is really rests on that strong data foundation. I mean, it flows across the ERPs, the plants, the suppliers, carriers, dealer networks, working across so many of those environments on your side. Where do you see making the biggest difference? Where do you see that making the biggest difference for companies building that reliable end-to-end picture?
Yeah, I think no one started with the end-to-end picture in place in the first place, right? You identified problems, or you had an executive identify a problem, and then you said, okay, we have a goal of reducing X, Y, Z, or improving this KPI. Then you broke it down into, okay, these are the systems that are being touched, and then we integrate the data. And I think the inherent, or does this work? The teams inherently work in silos, right? Because the planning works different from the sourcing, from the procurement, from production planning. And the first step is always having someone in the room who sponsors an initiative and say, we're gonna go after this bucket. Then we collect the data and we bring it together. We look at it all at the same way and develop an understanding and mutual collaboration. So if I, as a buyer or as a planner, do X, how does this impact my logistics downstream, right? Because the teams, they don't necessarily know if I change the plan and I have to expedite. If I change in sales, if I have new incentives and I push a certain model because it's better for my quarter closing to sell bigger cars, how does this impact my planning, my logistics downstream? And then you have big cost portions popping up. So starting with a problem, bringing together a group, working towards a KPI. Then condensing the data into we come from the space of process mining, so traceability of process, and bringing that into adding your context to it and saying, okay, if we move the needle here by X, and what 5 things should we go after, and build dedicated solutions for it that you then roll out to the teams and meet the teams where they are. I think oftentimes companies try to boil the ocean and do multi-year system replacement projects, right? Or try to model out everything at once, and then you get stuck in a limbo without any return. And in a time where our industry is under so much pressure, not many can afford having no return on investment for that long, right? So prioritize your initiatives top down. Which KPIs do you want to move? Think out which data you need to try to move that and to explain, and then go to solutioning, iterating very, very quickly, roll out, trial and error, and get the buy-in from the people, and report out on results.
Thank you. Mukesh, the same question to you. Where are you seeing that kind of having that end-to-end picture in place? Like where does that unlock value for you?
So absolutely, right, for a truck OEM and also like playing a big part in the energy storage space, right? So it's very important that we have that end-to-end visibility, like from, I would say, like your tier 2, tier 3 supply base, right? Means up to like the products getting delivered to your customers. Very, very important. At this moment, I would say like we are like focusing more on the internal visibility, kind of, right from the raw material arriving at your dock, right? Means until like it's get delivered. So all that production traceability, the lot level, the serial level traceability, right? Means it's very important. Again, right, to Adam rightly mentioned, right, means we have to like prioritize, means our efforts into like what level of like visibility you actually need, right? So but that being said, for us, it's also like important that we use that for critical component side because of like the, again, going by the compliance or other requirements. We also like focus on the sub-tier visibility with our raw material like supplies, right, for the critical components, the high voltage batteries and all. The only, again, it's all about like prioritization. Of course, like if you have endless resources, you can like implement that process like all across. But again, just based on like what we feel that is a priority, we actually go ahead with our critical suppliers to begin with.
Thank you. I mean, as you say that it's all about kind of prioritization, but it does also enable you to respond faster with more precision as well. You know, so thinking about that and the kind of the pace of change of sourcing and the footprint is changing faster than ever. And how is that better data also helping you to make those decisions towards greater localization and regional resilience as well?
Yeah, so I would say like nowadays, like after like all, especially like after the recent, the trade events, the trade policy shifts that we all have seen in the industry, it's important that we stop like considering the unit piece price as the important factor to decide our supply base, right? So, we bring in like the whatever the volatilities in the space, right? The trade, I would say the compliance regulations, any warranty, whatever the obligations that, especially as I said, in the ESS domain, it's very important. So we have to like capture like all that data and determine whether my supply node right now is, of course, like it might look cheap or the most cost effective, but is it going to be like the same reasonably accessible in the future in case of like such kind of like events? So yeah, I mean, it's very important that we consider like all these aspects, and this is exactly what we do in our resilient grid model, right? Means we try to like capture like the country of origin risks and several other risks, and try to like come up with like our like we score our existing supply nodes and also like work on the alternate options. So yeah.
Thank you. Thomas, same question to you. You know, how is that better data turning that transparency into kind of more faster and confident action?
I keep smiling and nodding my head. I would love to work with you guys in my day-to-day business. Because often case I see a requirement coming from end customer side, let's say please, dear team, create transparency about all raw materials going into semiconductors. And then we get all the questions. We have to map all the data. It's exhaustive discussions. Taking the approach, Adam, you said it's not us against you. You reveal the data. No, we don't want to do that. It's IP. It's us against the problem. So let's understand the problem. And then Emmanuel, you said understand the problem, have a KPI, know what you are using the data for. I would love to see that approach. And finally, this is why I was just nodding. Mukesh, you said understand the criticality of the different parts. So what I would love to see is putting up a matrix, maybe define the axis however you want it, like criticality or potential impact in case of a shortage. Come up with different areas in this matrix, and then the answer to mitigate the risk is not always gather more data. You know, it can be as simple as stockpile a year of demand, you know, or it can be come up with a redundant source, or it can be you don't need a mitigation measure anyhow for this part because it's not crucial for the car to leave the factory, or come up with a supply capacity reservation agreement. So I would love to see this multifaceted approach to come up with a plan that really makes your supply chain more resilient instead of just gathering data and not knowing what I use them for.
Yeah. Adam, anything to add from what kind of Thomas and Mukesh said there?
One of my favorite cliches is that all models are wrong, some are useful. And so whether it's paying attention to new housing starts and forecasting light-duty truck sales, all models are wrong, some are useful. And I think we need to understand that we're going to make some wrong assumptions, we're going to ask some wrong questions, but we are all trying to develop that model of how do we have a business continuity to provide our products to the customers. I can't make a left-hand drive vehicle for a right-hand drive market. There are going to be targeted, segmented requirements of different markets. And so from the data that we have, how do we meet the segmentation and the demands? We've seen that in crash standards of different countries. We see it in the standards of the luminance of a headlight and what can be done and what cannot be done. And that impacts styling, and that impacts commonality, and that impacts complexity. That frontier has made its way to supply chain. And so we're gonna have to deal with it, but the idea that it's not solvable is just flawed from the beginning. And so when we bring together a spirit of partnership, we will solve it faster, we'll solve it with lower impact on our teams and our people, we'll solve it with less pain to our governance bodies, and we'll be able to do it in a more profitable way for society.
Thank you. I want to touch a little bit more on more of the technology solutions to help. But I mean, we've talked a lot about, I mean, even you said, Adam, before about we hope AI could help with all of this. But Emmanuel, where are you seeing kind of automated approaches or even AI in some cases work well, and what needs to be in place for these technologies to add more value?
Yeah, I think the data, again, needs to be contextualized. Like, what does on time and in full mean for you? What does an acceptable risk mean for you? How can I swap part A with part B if I change configuration? How can I map my bill of material all the way upstream to what supplier do I need then? So if I have all of that in place and I really want to drive an agentic planning solution, right, then that's the one part. The other part that needs to be in place, where I think our industry is a little bit behind others, is a lot of communication and a lot of interaction is happening outside of transactional systems. So these are emails, these are phone calls, these are Slack messages, Teams messages, whatever it may be. And if you really want to understand or identify something, you basically tell AI to replicate a process. So you need to have not only how is your data connected, you need to have your KPIs contextualized, and you have your process flow contextualized. So which step do I do in which point of time when I see scenario X? Like what you said, right? Do I stock for a year? Is the best solution to maybe change my production plan? Is the best solution to maybe suggest to a customer to skip a certain part or configuration is my suggestion to go up to engineering and say like, hey, is there any way we can do this differently? But without having that data all contextualized, just letting the agentic solution or the automation run is going to end up in a disaster. And then the aftermath is traceability of agentic solutions. So it's like you train a new employee, right? You add a new employee to your workflow, which is now the agent, and your employer left traces in the process. They clicked this button, they did this, they changed master data. So I want to map exactly what the agentic solution automation is doing, that I can see if it actually is adding value. I think we had it in the session before where it was like, we need to find ways to deploy AI in a way that we can track the ROI and make a positive business case out of it. And I see very little traceability, not only from a compliance perspective on what does the agent do, what it's supposed to do, but also do the outcomes that my automation and agentification drive actually save me money, save me operational resources, and make me better. And those are the two things. Put the data in the right context, add your process context, and then make the outcome of your AI automation solutions traceable.
Thank you. Before I open the floor to the audience, Mukesh, I want to get your thoughts on the same question of where are you seeing kind of AI work or automation work well for you right now, and what needs to be in place for you as well?
So in my opinion, again, going by my experience with suppliers as well on this, the sub-tier visibility is where I think AI and automation they are already like playing a part, but eventually like with I would say the arrival of these agentic AIs, we will have like those fully automated processes. We were just discussing initially, right, means about different formats of data requirements by customers to suppliers, and eventually like it's kind of like an additional workload for them, cost up and all that. So I truly believe like with all this AI and automation, it will become like regardless of the formats, right? Means of course like we should standardize, we should try to like make it our requirements more structured, just so even I can consume it well, right? So, but at the same time, regardless of that fact, the processes are going to be like much smoother as far as like identifying like what sort of like information is needed, capturing that data and preserving it for whatever purpose we have. So that's like one of the things where I feel at the same time, transportation management is something that again we are actively like working with companies on this to like fully kind of like automate right from a shipment is ready for pickup to it gets delivered, and in between, right, do all the freight procurement automation as well, right? You go ahead and negotiate my whatever the quotes that you receive from different freight providers, the 3PLs. So all in all, right, that also is going to like save us a lot of like time in terms of like and also like making the process more efficient.
Perfect, thank you. Opening up to the floor now, if any of our audience have any questions, just raise your hands. I can't really see from it. Okay. We'll carry on because I have plenty more questions, because Thomas, I want to get your views on, you know, the constraints of some of the deep upstream, you know, whether it's like the chip or chip material, or ultimately the, you know, what shapes, sorry, let me rephrase my question. There's real opportunity, I would say, in connecting that upstream with the downstream signals more closely. So how do you see that visibility kind of cascading across the supply chain, where, you know, and where could kind of scenario planning help to move the industry forward there?
So I'm thinking 7-8 years ago when I joined Infineon in the supply chain team, I was also faced with a lot of manual planning processes. I don't want to say by then it wasn't already sophisticated, because we had different variables and inputs. We had market estimations, we had potential sales estimations, we had our capacity lines, we had all the boundary conditions in, yet it was a reoccurring continuous manual planning. So over the past years, and still up to now for the future, we have a digital agenda. So of course we are driving automation, digitalization, and as you said, Emmanuel, not only to reduce our workload, but also to optimize the outcome. Taking that into account, I think for us, we strive for the best utilization of our fabs, and I think data transparency upstream, downstream, combined with different demand signals, either internal forecast, customer demand signals, market signals, overall car sales, developments, dealer inventories, so all those variables coming together in a planning that for us intrinsically best optimizes our capacity utilization.
Thank you. I also want to touch on mapping the supply chain is as much about, some of the trust around using the technology and sharing the data. So how do you approach that conversation with your partners and kind of what helps build that mutual confidence between you all to make that greater transparency possible?
So I think I don't want to repeat myself, but I like it to be in a partnership approach. So when our customers or our partners are having similar goals that are based on transparency of certain data processes or raw material sources, for example, I'd like personally to be looped into that discussion early on. I see myself being faced with questions, and then it's like a questions answer game, and to a certain extent you can or cannot answer those questions or do not want to answer those questions. But I think if the partner would loop us as a supplier into that conversation early enough to also shape the problem, understand the problem, and then also maybe give some guidance or input towards where we are going in finding a solution. That's what I would appreciate in the collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. Emmanuel, from the partner side.
Yeah, we are an open architecture, so our platform has an open API concept, and we work a lot with development partners, we work with tech partners, we acquire companies, and I think that a partnership approach is absolutely necessary, because if you have that context graph that Celonis provides, or that post-intelligence graph, right, you want to meet the end user where they are. Is it you expose it to a co-pilot and they can work within a co-pilot? Do you build a dedicated application? Do you expose it via networks to a customer or to a supplier? We really want to expose the context and the knowledge that we have to make things work. We acquired a decision intelligence lab recently, also out of an academic partnership, because we really believe that it all starts with planning, and giving all that context into a planning engine that's going to help you start your processes faster and plan better, and then the decision intelligence. So if you have all of the context, what's the next best action that you can take? And again, there we partner a lot, because technology is moving so fast that it's impossible to do this within your four walls and protect your data. So open ecosystem, deployment partners, academic partners, and customer partnerships for development.
Perfect, thank you. Adam, in our conference last year, and to quote you, you said, trust and data is everybody's job. So what have you kind of found to make that collaboration work?
I think if you start with a posture of respect, that's the best first step. And then you want to start by helping your supplier understand that, Nissan is a customer-facing brand, and while they're doing business-to-business transactions, we're doing business-to-customer transactions, that the overall opinion of the brand is very important to us, obviously, and that if there is a problem or if there is a disruption, it won't be the tier 2 or the tier 3 supplier listed in the major media publication of your choice, right? Because that doesn't draw eyeballs and that doesn't sell media. And so what we are doing is for our best interest to help protect ourselves as we help protect our partners. And so when I sit down with a supplier that may prefer to keep some of their information in a one-sided visibility perspective, then we start with just an evaluation of, okay, if that were to happen, how strong is your program? What is your stage of maturity? Then you try to work your way into, and why do you have this policy? Because how many policies in our businesses are just organizational scar tissue? I burned my hand touching that once, I'm never going to touch it again. You might be trustworthy, but someone else in your organization might use that data in an inappropriate way or a non-competitive way, or whatever problems have occurred in that person's past. So you start to understand that their behavior makes sense in light of their story. You respect that that story is real. And then you try to put in the best protections possible to still protect their brand, protect their company, and protect yours. And time again, from the largest multinationals whose valuation is probably double or triple Nissan's as its own, to the smallest direct suppliers, we find a way. And we respect the maturity of the programs that they have, we respect the complexity of the ask, and we respect the need for standardization, or else we won't even have something that's reliable that helps protect us, which is helping protect them. And we usually go through that story pretty well.
Thank you. Well, to close, I want to ask you one quick fire question, and Mukesh, I'll start with you. What's next for you or your next priority in your supply chain mapping journey?
I would say as I started off with the thing with the critical, prioritizing your critical phase of components and trying to map that end-to-end visibility. Of course, we to a certain extent we have already achieved it. The next phase for us would be extending that effort into our next level of criticality components or the supply nodes. And also, means we are talking about all the partnerships and improving our relationships with the suppliers, having those better conversations with, and also improving our ability to onboard suppliers who are willing and share and able to share data, which is absolutely essential for all this the automation and digitization and mapping that is extremely important.
Thank you. Thomas.
So being faced with a lot of questions from our end customers about transparency, I think with all these requests, Infineon learns as well what is the development in the market, what is the need of our customers. So I think the next step on that journey is also to try to reflect those requests in a best possible way in order to react fast on upcoming questions from other customers, or to understand if 3 customers are asking in that direction, maybe we should come up with a system to consolidate the data in a certain way that we can more easy react to questions from customer 4, 5, and 6. So I think that will be the next step, understanding the requirements for transparency, defining a set of data that we can share that are able to solve those problems that hopefully are defined beforehand, and then providing that data in a more easy, non-manual way.
Okay. Adam, your next priority.
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to instead give you what my utopia is, because every next step I'm going to take is towards that utopia. My utopia is perfect referential integrity. And by that, I mean, if a design engineer receives a CAD file, and that CAD file has layers and individual components, and it has an implied structural bill of materials, that CAD file matches the quotation, matches the supply chain data, and that the number of clips on the wiring harness is the same here, and the brown ones are listed here, and the price of the brown one is listed here, and the address that we pick up the brown one, and those systems, both in our design legacy systems, our purchasing and procurement legacy systems, and our supply chain operation decisions would have referential integrity. And with that, we could put the answers at our fingertips. We would have the upstream disruption knowledge on the downstream manufacturing. If there's a cyber attack on the tier 4, I can know which trim of which grade at what factory is going to be disrupted and how that's going to affect our sales, our dealers, our inventory. So I want referential integrity, and every step that we're going to take is going to be towards that goal.
Perfect, thank you. Manuel, you can either say your next priority or your utopia.
I have two. I'm going to talk to Adam and help him solve his utopia. That's the first one. And the second one, where I'm very excited about, is we're using AI a lot in our deployments, and we some very interesting progress in getting faster time to value for our customers. So setting the data models up much faster. I'm very excited about that, and then getting really to the next step of fueling the AI aspirations of our customers with really more and more context and going broader and deeper into supply chain and continue the success story and realizing value for OEMs. Yeah, that's for me in the upcoming weeks.
Perfect, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you so much. And if you do have questions, please do ask.